Agriculture and the rise of civilizations. Fire, language, sophisticated tools and weapons, all of these are major factors in the formation of the first civilizations. And today we will cover one of the major factors of the shift from hunter-gatherer societies to the first ancient civilizations, the development of early agriculture. This is Dr. Luntian with another informative video. My goal here is to disseminate in a simple and brief way botanical concepts that are relevant to agriculture. This is part of a series focusing on how humans have used botanical knowledge throughout history and how botany has shaped different cultures for humans. If you like my content and would like to view or listen to more of my talks, please hit the like and subscribe buttons so the artificial intelligence algorithm can lead you to my random forest of botanical knowledge. And now to our main topic, examples of the importance of botany during prehistoric times and antiquity. And on this spoken essay, we will focus on ancient agriculture. In the Ethnobotany video, and the link is down below this video, I mentioned that because of the metabolic relationship between plants and humans, our ecological interactions with plants are inevitable. I think agriculture is the ultimate example of that because this activity provides us with a steady supply of the caloric requirement to live as organisms. There's a lot of archaeological and historical evidence that shows that large ancient civilizations became possible because of early humans that were able to domesticate and cultivate plants and also animals. And this is one of the main reasons why humans shifted from being hunter and gatherers to sedentary residential people. Think about it for a second. Instead of burning calories from hours and hours of running and catching game, people can now raise high calorie food on their own, like vegetable, starchy food, and, pigs and cows. This basically started the concept of a home or residence for humans and territories. And that's really important. Also, those free hours that the early humans had after abandoning the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, they used those free time to develop tools and technology. Now, this is just a hypothesis, but perhaps that switch to farming also provided higher levels of nutrients that were very important to brain development. And that may be the reason why humans developed exponentially in terms of having really advanced ways of living. The best example for this is the Fertile Crescent near the Nile River. I don't know exactly the date when the Fertile Crescent came about, but it's probably dates all the way back to 5,000 BCE or BC, or from 10,000 BCE to 5,000 BCE. And in this region, nomadic tribes in the desert that roamed the desert in that region, as well as in the Mediterranean regions, started to flock near the Nile at some point, probably in the Tigris and Euphrates as well. But in order to settle, these early peoples needed to be able to have consistent dietary supply. Enter domestication of plants and animals. Currently, we have millions of different varieties and cultivars of crops to choose from, but in those times, they had to develop their own domesticated crops and had to settle in a desert region. But remember, they have to be in that area in those areas where there's water so they can actually cultivate fruit trees and grains. Now that we know that agriculture is likely a factor for the shift from hunter-gatherer societies to sedentary living, let's talk about what these ancient peoples had to figure out to be able to perform agriculture. The first requirement was to find space in basically any land that is arable, meaning you can farm it. It can be tilled and planted. The next requirement is water availability. Now, people probably figured out when rainy seasons will happen in that region or in any region, but to be able to farm crops, you need to be able to control how you administer the water and the amount of water to the land and the plants. So in other words, they need to figure out irrigation systems. And in ancient times, there's different irrigation systems. Some farmers diverged water from streams or rivers. Some collected water from wells. Some people even designed and built complex underground systems in the desert to prevent rapid evaporation with all that heat and dryness in the air. So these are a lot of examples, but I'm showing you the type of aqueduct that the Romans engineered in their time. It's basically a bridge, but instead of vehicles flowing on top, it's water that they diverge from streams and springs. So in addition to water, they need to be able to cultivate plants. So they need to learn how to grow plants. So there's ancient cultivation practices, some of which are still being used today, and most of these methods are manual or require some manual primitive tool and the use of animals to work that land. So for example, using water buffalo to plow the land. So while they know how to grow, these ancient people need to figure out what to grow. So the next skill was being able to breed and propagate these wild type plants. People didn't have solid theory on quantitative genetics in those ancient times, but they were applying theories of artificial selection without a doubt. These plant breeders would collect seeds from the wild, basically wild type seeds, and plant them in their test fields or in their gardens, and then they have to measure or qualitatively select plants that had the desirable traits that they want. Maybe it's higher caloric amount, more starch, more sweetness, more yield, easier to harvest. Those traits are the ones that they select, the ones that we still select. And it could be accidental, but mostly it's deliberate. And basically rinse and repeat for many generations, many cycles until you have your ideal vegetable or crop. So if you like the botanical topics that I discuss in my channel, please hit like and tap the subscribe button. If you have interesting examples for ancient agriculture, which I know there's thousands of examples, comment below. Now, breeding crops was never easy, but today we have accumulated a lot of knowledge and tools to be able to breed plants in a shorter period. When I mean today, the current times. This was not the case during the rise of civilization, even though they had a lot of knowledge and they probably applied the scientific method back then, even though they didn't call it that. Plant breeding in that time was a long process, and even until now, really. And it involved a lot of trial and error before we were able to literally reap the benefits of those crops. And this required being able to select the right candidate wild types in their natural habitats. And to make things more challenging, they had to develop ways to cultivate them in a uniform environment to produce a consistent yield of crops. So that's basically a summary of the main topics that I discussed in this brief talk. We can make the argument that agriculture is the process of harnessing the life cycle and ecology of plants to productionize foraging, productionization. And selling produce probably was one of the first type of market economies back then. Grow plants, sell food, supply and demand. While these are ancient examples, the knowledge of the first botanists was cutting edge at that time, and most of the information collected from those early periods are still relevant and being applied today. And honestly, a lot of those crops, those ancient crops, we still have them, and we still have some germplasms available for a lot of those ancient plants. That's it for today's video. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy my story. I will be releasing my next video on botany in Antiquity Part 2, focusing on spices. Once again, if you like my content and would like to view or listen to more of my talks, please hit the subscribe button so the AI algorithm can lead you to my channel. This is Dr. Luntian, your YouTube botanist, saying let's meet again in our next botany session.